All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. We'll get started in just a second. We were experimenting around with some stuff for the microphones, and I have no idea if this sounds normal to you, but you can tell me in the comments if you think the sound is weird. My computer's been very strange to me all day. But we got a lot of stories to get through. As always, you can support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. I appreciate that. And you could subscribe to the newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. All right, just doing some last second checks and then we will get started. You're telling me it sounds normal. Great. I hope that's the case. Then we will go ahead and get started. As always, Den is here. If you have questions or comments, leave them in the comments section, and Den will make sure I see them after a story. I have some stories I've been talking about. There's one that I'm very interested in sharing with you that I don't think has been reported in many places. But let's start off tonight by talking about a controversy that involves Chick-fil-A, and I feel like it's been a while since I've said that. But basically, this entire controversy that is angering so many people on the right, because you know how much they love to get angry, it involves this one Facebook post from a single Chick-fil-A in Utah. And you can see what it says here. Congratulations to the happy couple. Dougie and Toby recently got married, and we are so beyond happy for them. And you could see these pictures of the two guys. They got married. Cool. I mean, listen, I don't know if how I feel about my local fast food joint congratulating anybody for anything. Like, I don't need you for that. I also have a lot of questions about this couple and why they really want to have their picture outside of Chick-fil-A, but maybe that's just an inside joke for them. Maybe it's where they first met. I don't know. Whatever their reasons, I don't know who these guys are. I don't know what their deal is. They seem happy though, so good on them. Who the hell cares what I think, right? So this is a very innocuous, normal post from a local Chick-fil-A. But as you can imagine, uh, people got very upset about this, and they got upset from both sides. A lot of liberals were kind of they had their eyebrows raised because, well, that's clearly a same-sex couple, and this is Chick-fil-A. This is a company that has a history with Christianity. This is a company that became, I mean, not well known. It was already well known, but it was in the news about 13, 14 years ago because of controversies involving gay people. This is a company that's so Christian that no matter where they're located, they are closed on Sundays to honor the Sabbath. And also, this is a Chick-fil-A in Utah. Utah is like one of the least safe spaces, the least safe states for gay people. So it's kind of unusual that this single restaurant is doing this, but like, yay, progress? Who knows? So when I first heard about this story, I thought, okay, some random franchise owner decided to put up this post, and they have no idea that Chick-fil-A as a company has kind of an anti-gay reputation. But at the same time, like, I was surprised that this was seized on by the right. And I'll show you what I mean by this. There is a right-wing outlet called the Washington Stand, which is run by the Family Research Council, which is a right-wing hate group. They put out a whole ass article on this. Do not enter. Oh my goodness. Chick-fil-A waffles on wokeness with same-sex marriage post and DEI focus. DEI didn't even have anything to do with that picture, but like, you know, if you're on the right, you got to work that in to whatever you're doing. And there's a couple things they pointed out. Let's see. While most of Chick-fil-A's chains are run by local operators, the fact that any location felt comfortable posting such a controversial message. Pause. What is the controversial message? What is the controversial message? Look at what they said. Congratulations to the happy couple. That's not controversial unless you're an asshole. But anyway, they posted such a controversial message. The fact that they did it is further proof that the company has not weeded out the LGBT extremism that sparked so much backlash just a couple of years ago. Extremism. What is the LGBT extremism that they are pointing at here? Is it that two gay people were smiling at a Chick-fil-A restaurant and you can't have that? Is it that the company said congrats to them and that's extreme? Like what are we mad about? What is the extremism? I have no idea. But then let's get to the point. Unfortunately for conservatives, the duplicity from Chick-fil-A runs deep. Ah, yes, Chick-fil-A, famous for beefing with conservatives. As a lot of Americans remember, customers, and especially Christians, were horrified to learn that Truett Cathy, that's the founder of Chick-fil-A, Truett Cathy's Chicken Empire, had not only stopped donating to the Salvation Army and Fellowship of Christian Athletes in 2019 after pressure from the far left, but that they had replaced their giving to these charities with organizations like the disgraced Southern Poverty Law Center. And if there's anything conservatives hate, it is talking about poverty and the law. The same bullies who inspired a gunman to storm the headquarters of the Family Research Council with the intent to murder as many staffers as possible. So somehow they're blaming SPLC for gun violence. Okay, let's back up. What the hell are they talking about? There's a couple things going on here worth exploring. But okay, so in 2019, the company has a charitable foundation and they decided they were going to stop giving money to like whatever the owners wanted to give money to. And they said they were going to focus their charitable giving on education, homelessness, and hunger. And they were going to direct money to those areas, probably because they seem pretty non-controversial. And by the way, there are Christian groups that do work in those areas, and they would give to those Christian groups as well. But in order to focus their giving in those areas, they said we're not going to give money to groups that have historically gotten money from us, and that included Salvation Army, which is really Christian, and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which has nothing to do with Chick-fil-A, right? So that's just a move they made because I think over the past 10, 15 years, they realized, listen, we know we have a Christian heritage. Our founders were Christian. We know we were rooted in Christian beliefs. In fact, if you go to Chick-fil-A now and you order a drink and you look at the bottom of your glass, you will find a Bible verse inscribed in it. However, at its core, it's still a company. It's still a company that wants to make money. And this is where it gets interesting because Chick-fil-A could make a lot more money if they were open on Sundays. However, I think this is one of the things that makes them stand out. It makes them special. So by opening on Sunday, you're kind of taking away a thing that their biggest fans actually like about them, that they're closed on Sundays. But if you're using your charitable arm to give money to like Christian groups that focus on homelessness and not the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, I think they realized no one's really going to care about that. So they made that change. And what did Family Research Council say again about all of this? They said, how dare they stop giving to Salvation Army and FCA, but they started giving to the Southern Poverty Law Center, the same people who placed the Family Research Council on their list of Christian hate groups. And then, totally not related to that, some crazy dude with a gun went to the Family Research Center headquarters. And thankfully, I don't think anyone got killed. But like their FRC has been blaming the Southern Poverty Law Center on that for years now. And it's like, no, it's probably a crazy dude with a gun. You might want to go after the guns and not the Family Research Council. I'm sorry, not the Southern Poverty Law Center, whose only thing that they did is they have a website where they say, here's why you're a hate group. These are the direct quotes of things you've said about gay people. Anyway, this is an absurd rant. And why are we doing this again? We're doing this because a gay couple got married and one Chick-fil-A was happy about it. The same conservatives are also mad. They're so mad that Mike Huckabee, who in 2023 said the company had gone full bore woke and that one of his biggest regrets in life was taking a public stand for Chick-fil-A in 2012. Mike Huckabee was like, I regret that. Which is a weird thing to say because Mike Huckabee gave birth to Sarah Huckabee Sanders. How is that not your biggest regret? But no, apparently saying defending Chick-fil-A in 2012 was the biggest, worst thing he's ever done in his life. Here's the other thing in this article that is insane. Chick-fil-A built a business model based almost entirely on faith. And frankly, that means they should be held to a higher standard. Yes, there are local operators with diverse objectives and opinions, but for the sake of the company's broader character, those individual franchises should be held to a moral code that reflects Chick-fil-A's stated beliefs. And the implication there is that Chick-fil-A's moral code involves hating gay people at all costs. At the very least, the vice president of DEI should be reassigned to support the Kathy's original mission, and the cancer of DEI should be eradicated from headquarters. Jesus Christ. Like, I know you hate gay people. You don't also have to hate people of color this much over chicken, over a Facebook post. By the way, do you know why companies do DEI? I'm not like someone who has ever worked for a company like this, but there's a good reason they might want to do DEI work, which is you want to open franchises in places where maybe people are not as familiar with your food. One way to do that is by making sure you have access to Black people who might be good franchise owners, but historically, companies like this don't know how to find them. They don't know how to talk to each other. For a lot of Black people, they might not have the ins to become a franchise owner, even if they have the capability of doing all that. And for a company to say, we want to make sure we're opening our doors as widely as possible because we want to expand and it's good for business. I get why a company like Chick-fil-A would want to take on diversity initiatives. And these Christian extremists are like, this is cancer. All because one Chick-fil-A said congrats to a gay couple. That's how insane these people are. Now, in response to all this, one article pointed this out that I wanted to share with you. When critics contacted Chick-fil-A's corporate headquarters to complain about the one Facebook post, the company declined to disavow the post. Instead, at least one complainant received a response reaffirming Chick-fil-A's commitment to inclusion. In that statement, the company said it embraces all people, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And when I saw that, I'm like, it sounds like you were whiny about something, and Chick-fil-A's corporate headquarters sent back a form letter that just said, oh, you're whining about a manager or something, or about gay people. The machine triggered the word gay, and the auto response was, sorry, we don't discriminate against gay people, copy paste, and they sent it off. And this person's like, I think they're supportive. No, I think Chick-fil-A just doesn't care about what one franchise owner posted. There were also some insane posts online. Look at this one from a pastor. One of the major reasons I ate at Chick-fil-A was because of the Christian values they once held. To be honest, there are restaurants that have better chicken. Chick-fil-A has every right to change their values. I have every right to change where I eat, and I will. He does. I'm not complaining about that. But you're telling me this guy was like, I would have eaten at Chick-fil-A even though their food sucks. But they changed their values. I thought they hated gay people. Turns out they just don't care at all. And I will not stand for that as a Christian. This is another one from a Christian commentator, Megan Basham. Chick-fil-A is standing by their DEI commitments. That includes LGBTQ inclusivity. This is not true with Kathy's Chick-fil-A. Oh my God, calm your ass down. And this is another one from a right-wing Twitter user. Farewell, Chick-fil-A. You are now like everyone else, but closed on Sundays. Oh my God. These people have nothing else going on in their lives. There was one more I think I wanted to share with you from the Western Journal, which is another right-wing outlet. And this is how they opened up their article. What was the Chick-fil-A under fire after betraying local customers with shockingly woke statement. As a general rule of thumb, if you're someone who runs a business, it's never a good idea to alienate your core constituency. Of what? Of who? Who did they alienate by saying congrats? Did they alienate like the most bigoted Christians you know? Because I promise you, if you're a Chick-fil-A corporate, their constituents are like everybody who eats chicken. They want to capture that entire market. And all the conservative Christians are like, no, no, no. We are your core constituency. We're the ones who hate. And we thought you were one of us. Oh my God. It is funny to me that the implication here is that conservative Christians will abandon a fast food restaurant because a single franchise said congratulations to a newly married same sex couples. Like, if that's what angers you to the point where you're changing your dietary habits, congrats on nothing else happening in your life. Tony Perkins, who's the head of the Family Research Council, he did an interview recently where he said Chick-fil-A really has dug in on this. They have not. And he said that the wages of DEI are death, business-wise. Like, calm down, big fella. Chick-fil-A knows damn well that Christians are not going to stop gorging their faces with chicken just because one franchise owner decided not to be an asshole to a gay couple. If you look at the comments under that Facebook post, by the way, they include things like, this is not a marriage. And also, someone demanded that the company oppose sodomy. That's how insane these people are. So, look, if anything, Chick-fil-A is not going to suffer at all from this. Maybe there's hope that this deals a blow to the power on the right to create culture war battles out of friggin' everything. Because here they are doing everything they can to make people angry, and nothing is working. And that's because it's hard to manufacture outrage over something so innocuous as a congratulatory post when there are actual people in the country right now being persecuted by the government. Like, if this is a crisis, then nothing is a crisis. Honestly, I don't even think this would have generated any attention if right-wingers didn't try to draw attention to it, because the post wasn't radical or political or honestly even that important. It was just nice. Like, society's not going to crumble because a chicken restaurant acknowledged that gay people exist. But that is what angers conservatives. And I'm going to do another story about that in a bit, which is all about conservatives being mad that gay people exist. I will say, as a progressive, I was kind of surprised that Chick-fil-A doesn't seem to have a position on this at all, though. Like, they're very much acting like we don't want anything to do with this. One franchise owner did it, and it's not our thing, so we're not gonna punish them over it. Who cares? Because for so long, and I'm a vegetarian, I'm not a Chick-fil-A customer, but for so long, Chick-fil-A was known as the anti-gay, pro-Christian business, and it seems like in recent years they've tried really hard to just not be known for that. And that's why they changed where they're giving money to as a charity. That's why they're explicitly saying, yeah, we're open to everybody. I think I read that in the state of Maine, there are openly same-sex married franchise owners of a Chick-fil-A. And that's not controversial. They just happen to be the franchise owners. But that's the thing. It's not a big deal at all. Normal people don't care about this stuff. So I guess if there's any silver lining here, it's that at a time when white evangelicals have so much power, it seems like they're still desperate for other people to get in line with their bigotry, and they get really, really big mad when no one else seems to be going along with it. So yay, progress. All right, I will stop there for a bit. What questions we got here? Oh, thanks for becoming a YouTube member. I appreciate that. Oh, they're happy. No wonder the religious right is furious. Nothing makes the religious right furious than watching people who are not them with a smile on their faces. Like, it makes them so sad. Aren't they tired of being angry? There was a time I thought that, like, you can't keep up the grievance shit forever, right? And that was like a good 20 years ago. So, yeah, I mean, if that's your whole personality, that you're always pissed about the dumbest things and you always fight for the most nonsensical things, of course, like just today, Tony Perkins was mad that that Donald Trump suggested we shouldn't have the Hyde Amendment in like a must pass bill. Like, yeah, let women choose their own healthcare. Let them use healthcare for abortions if that's what they need to do. That's the sort of stuff that upsets them. Chick-fil-A saying congrats to gay people upsets them. ICE murdering an innocent woman in Minnesota, you're not going to hear them complain about that at all. Doesn't bother them one bit. All right, I'm jumping to a different story. Give me a second here. It's the one you've all been waiting for. All right. This may be the most predictable story I have ever said. It turns out an unvaccinated person may have spread measles while visiting Ark Encounter, the creationist Noah's Ark replica in Kentucky. And the reason we know this is because the Kentucky Department of Public Health issued an exposure alert last week. Check this out. Health officials have identified potential measles exposures in Grant County, Kentucky. An unvaccinated out of state traveler stayed at the Holiday Inn and Suites in Dry Ridge for a few days and visited Ark Encounter on December 29th. And then it says here, measles is a highly contagious respiratory virus that can cause serious health complications, especially in young children. Vaccination is the best protection against measles, which is true. But it sounds very much like, yeah, I believe that 100%. And the reason it's a problem, obviously, is that if someone with measles went to Ark Encounter, you can almost guarantee that that place is surrounded, is full of people who are not vaccinated for measles. Ark Encounter is a place where they practically beg families to bring their little kids, and you don't have to pay a ticket admission for kids like 10 and under. So this place is crawling with unvaccinated children who could be seriously hurt if they catch measles. And someone who's unvaccinated and has measles went there. And that is a scary thing that Ark Encounter has no precautions in place for something like that, because all it is a meetup spot for the scientifically illiterate. So of course you're going to get unvaxxed people there. They're already there to see why the Earth is supposedly 6,000 some years old. These are not the smartest science people. But in any case, I just did a story not long ago about how a South Carolina church that promotes unvaccination, they have become the epicenter of a measles outbreak over there. And what's really troubling about this whole story is that so far, it's been about a week since this happened. Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum and the company Answers in Genesis, which oversees both of those, none of them have said anything on social media about the measles outbreak. Like, why would you not at least say, hey, somebody had measles on the 29th. Maybe you should all get yourself checked out. And if your kids are really young, get them vaccinated. They haven't done anything like that. I think they think no one will notice if we just don't say anything about it. Like if Ken Ham and anyone else who works at these places, if they cared about the people that they invite to their attractions, they would publicly urge people to get vaccinated immediately. I did a story about a year ago about a private Christian school in Texas. And the guy who's running that school was bragging online because Texas put out a list of the least vaccinated schools in the state, and his Christian school was number one, fewest vaccinations in the school. And he was like, we're making shirts for these. That's what Ark Encounter seems to be doing. They just don't care. So it's not surprising to me that someone who rejects science in one realm would reject it in another. Like, that's the danger of creationism. And this is why I sometimes get people annoyed that I ever talk about Ark Encounter, because they say it's a fringe group. What they believe doesn't matter. And none of that is true. Like, there are a lot of creationists in the United States. But the problem with creationism is that if you're willing to believe that evolution is a hoax and the universe is like a few years old or whatever it is, you are more likely to buy into a lot of other anti-science lies. Like, this is why pro-science advocates spend so much time and energy fighting religious bullshit. Not because creationism is necessarily bad for your health, but because there is a serious consequence if you get in a habit of ignoring what the experts say because some pastor demands otherwise. Right? So vaccine denial and creationism, those are not two different pathologies. They're like two sides of the same coin. If you think scientists are making things up, it's a lot easier to dismiss the evidence that vaccines work. So this is entirely predictable. In a saner world, this incident would force creationists to think twice about promoting faith-based ignorance as if it's a moral good. They're not going to do that. So, like, for now, we just have to wait to see if this spreads. And I will tell you this, two things. One, I think I have read some reporting that the unvaccinated person who was later diagnosed with measles was a child at Ark Encounter, which is scary because I don't know what's going to happen to that kid. But the other thing is this. A friend just sent me this today. Check out this article from an Ohio news outlet. Look at this headline. Ohio health officials report state's first measles cases. We are 1 week into the new year. And look at the date line here, January 8th, 2026. Look at this story right here. The Ohio Department of Health reported 3 cases Thursday, all children from the same household. One had the illness onset at the end of 2025, the other 2 in 2026. And that director said the children were all unvaccinated at the time they were exposed, traveling to an area with an ongoing measles outbreak. Oh, really? Which area would that be? With over 2,000 cases reported throughout 2025 in the US, the epicenter of this most recent possible outbreak is localized to Grant County, with a specific focus on one of the busiest tourist destinations across Kentucky. That would be Ark Encounter. So that's where we are at right now. Creationists who reject science are now spreading measles at their creationist attractions, which means people are coming in from out of state. They are exposed to the virus. They're going to go back home. How do you think this stuff spreads? I tweeted about this story a few days ago, and it went viral to the point where I'm starting to get a ton of responses from people, and I have no idea who they are. Like, the trolls have found the tweet and they're responding. And the amount of anti-science misinformation that is everywhere is kind of appalling. I can't tell you the number of people who chimed in to say, well, if you're vaccinated, who cares? Why do you care about this? You're safe. It's like, that is not how this works. These people don't know what herd immunity is. They don't know how vulnerable children are to this disease. They have no idea how serious this disease is. They do what they did during COVID, which is, it's like a flu. You'll get over it. That's not reality here. That is not how it works for a lot of vulnerable people. But that's what Ken Ham is up to. That's what Answers in Genesis is up to. So we'll see if this keeps spreading. I'm disturbed by the possibility that it might. But I'll leave it at that for now. Like, the story's not over yet because this virus is still spreading. And surprise, no word from Ham and AIG yet. Correct. They haven't said a word. You would never know it by looking at their social media, and I looked. If laughter is the best medicine, I'm curing them all right now. Is that Schadenfreude? That we are laughing at the idea that the people at Ark Encounter have measles? Well, this is the strange thing. I'm the one that seems to care about the children there more than anyone who works there. Like, I want to see the children who visit Ark Encounter be safe. I want them to be healthy. You know who doesn't want them to be healthy? Ken Ham, all the adults at that location, the ones who work there, manage that place. Like, why do I care about these kids more than they do? Well, the book says to be fruitful and multiply. Good job, measles, right? Fair point. I love that. I have seen a lot of jokes about, well, Noah did say two of everything on the ark, so you can't just have like one measles virus. They gotta be multiplying there. Weren't they supposed to be adding an actual theme park and other facilities to Ark Encounter, and it never happened, or is it still happening? They are slowly adding different things to Ark Encounter, but it comes and goes. They hired a new guy to take over Ken Ham's place, and then within like 2 months, they fired the guy and haven't spoken a public word about it ever since. It's like, what happened to that guy? I want to know. By the way, I also, with the help of a friend, we keep track of Ark Encounter's attendance numbers because there's a public way to calculate it. And it seems like Ark Encounter's numbers have been going down even since COVID. So they're just doing worse and worse any given month, which is great. It's what we said would happen all along. But I don't want them to have measles. You can call that selfish if you want, but I don't want measles to spread. It is appalling that Ken Ham doesn't seem to care. By the way, the thumbnail for the podcast about this was diabolical. If you're watching this segment when I post the segment, I'll use the same picture. I will admit that was me playing with like artificial intelligence stuff. I think I just said I want Ark Encounter to have measles, and it gave me a picture. And I'm generally opposed to AI for all the reasons everyone's opposed to AI, but I saw the picture generated and I laughed, and I'm like, I can't not use this image. You'll see. All right, I'm jumping to a different story. Give me a moment here. All right. This is a disturbing legal decision that was recently made, and I want to explain it because I feel like you're going to see a lot more lawsuits like this in 2026. You may recall that last June, the Supreme Court's 6-3 conservative supermajority, they ruled in a case called Mahmoud v. Taylor. And the thing that they decided is that if there is a parent who doesn't want their kid reading a book in school with LGBTQ characters or themes, those parents could opt out due to their religious beliefs. And when that happened, the reaction was, wait, like you're saying parents can take their kids out of the classroom if something violates their religious faith. But like, what happens in a science class if kids learn about evolution? Are you going to like invoke your religious beliefs and say, my kid cannot be learning about this? How dare you? Like, what's the slippery slope here? What's going to happen? And we don't know the answer to that yet. It's early, but that was the concern. Well, now there is one case that is dealing with it, and I'll show you the details right now. The story involves a guy named Alan. Alan is a devout Christian who has a 5-year-old son who just began kindergarten at a school in Massachusetts. And almost immediately after the school year started, Alan tells his kid's teacher he's concerned about the curriculum and he wanted like the syllabi for his son's classes, which is comical to me because you think kindergarten teachers have syllabi? This isn't a college class. You think they list out, here's what we're going to do every day? These are kindergartners. If one kid like shits his pants, class is canceled for the day. You can't have a syllabi in kindergarten. But in any case, he's like, tell me what you're going to do so I can like tell you if it makes me mad. He also demanded that his son be allowed to opt out from any DEI curriculum. And the school said, no, because what the hell are you talking about? They told him, first of all, your complaint has nothing to do with your religion because you're not bringing it up. So we are not even obliged to go along with what you're saying. But also, you didn't tell us what you have a problem with. Also, hello? Like it's the first week of school. But Alan wrote back and said, well, me and my son are both Christians, as if that should somehow settle the debate. I don't know. But he later sent a more specific memo saying, my son should be exempt from anything at school covering sexual orientation or gender identity. But that's also a really weird request because, like, what do you read in school? If you read a book that involves two parents, you know, the Berenstain Bears, if you read a book that has mama and papa, well, that technically implies a sexual orientation and gender identity. So are you not allowed to read anything that has parents now? I don't know. Like it was an impossible request to fill. And when the school responded to that dad, here's the thing they wrote, which is just funny to me. Look at this paragraph here. With respect to your request to opt your son out of sexual orientation and human sexuality, we will accommodate that request. Please note that there is no sexual education and human sexuality education in kindergarten. So, like, I guess we'll listen to your request, but also that's not a thing that happens. So the school is politely responding to this dad saying, yeah, you can tell us what you want us to do, but also everything you're demanding makes no sense whatsoever. So at this point, the dad, Alan, he gets his lawyer involved. And the lawyer makes more specific requests. The lawyer says the son has to be removed from any lessons that normalize or promote LGBTQ identities or lifestyles. And then they submitted examples of what they were talking about. And I got images for you. For example, there is a book by Suzanne Lang called Families, Families, Families. And this very, very in-depth book basically talks about the different kind of families that are out there. And all the families are depicted by barnyard animals. And so, for example, in this book, they say some people have big families. And then they say this. Here we go. This is what I wanted to show you. Yes. Let me remove me so you could see the roosters. And you could see at the very bottom, some children have two dads. And now, why did they say that in the book? Well, because it's true. That's it. Some kids have two dads. They do exist. Okay, here was another picture that the lawyer noted. Some children have two mothers. And you could see that these koala moms are moms, I think, because they have eyelashes. That's it. They're very mad about this book. And that's just one of the books. I mean, I know, horrifying, truly. But that book also ends with the line, if you love each other, then you're a family. And that goes against like everything Jesus taught conservative Christians. The other book they cited, the lawyer cited, is one called All Are Welcome by Alexandra Penfold. And that's a book about how all kids, regardless of where your background is, you're all part of our community. And in the book's illustrations, let me show you one of them in particular, that the only writing on this page is, you have a place here, right up there. You have a place here. And you could see, look, we have one family, two family, another one in the background. Whoops. And then, oh, what do we have here on the bottom right? That looks to be two women and a child, and the woman in the blue dress appears to be pregnant. That's it, though. The caption is just, you have a place here, whoever you are. There's one more page in the book where apparently everyone's at a party. All are welcome. You have a space here. And then, what do we have here? Well, it looks like you have a Muslim family. In the upper left, you have a family with a child who has a disability. It looks like you have a gay couple up there, and it looks like you have that lesbian couple under the word ARE. But that's it. They do exist. They are part of our community. And that's what made them very mad. This is leftist propaganda. Now, those two books were part of the kindergarten curriculum. But what's interesting is in all of the legal paperwork, Alan and his lawyer basically admitted that while the books have been used, it's not even clear they were ever shown to Alan's son. Like, we're just whining about something that literally never affected your child. How do they know Alan didn't read those books, even if his class did? Because it turns out Alan's son has an IEP. He has an individualized education program, which means he needs a little extra help, a little extra time. So they pull him out of class, because that's what a good public school does, to help him out. And while they are helping him out, this kid's dad is complaining to the teachers because they're also trying to teach kids to be kind and inclusive and tolerant and compassionate. So they don't even know if Alan's kids saw any of these books. But the district had a great response to all of this. Check this out right here. This is the response from the district to the lawsuit that Alan eventually filed. Look at the top line here. Setting aside the fact that these images depict creatures that neither marry nor practice religion nor operate on a system of morals, they're talking about the roosters and the koalas. The book does not reference gay marriage or hold out same-sex couples or any other potential family grouping as being legally moral, correct, or equivalent to same-sex marriages. It simply holds them as in existence. Yeah, they didn't say any of this was good or bad, only that they're part of your community. Why is that a problem for these Christians? I did laugh at the... Where did it go? Ah, yes. Look at this line right here. While plaintiff might have sincerely held religious beliefs as to what a marriage is, there is no reference to the roosters or koalas' marital status. The fact that they had to write that sentence because the dad's like, I don't want two male roosters raising a child, that goes against everything. They also said, the school district also said this about the other book. Neither families, nor all are welcome instruct its audience on how to become gay or that being gay is something that should be lauded or encouraged or is morally correct. Both, in the best case scenario for Alan, are geared toward more tolerance, the acceptance of those who are different from being part of our world. They are not the tutorials on the moral equivalency of one's gayness that Alan would have this court believe. They're just going to town on Alan because he's an idiot. Alan also complained about DEI in his letter, but the school said we can't do anything about that because we have no clue what you're talking about. What curriculum do you want to remove your kid from that you think is too woke? And he said this in his affidavit. Where did it go? Here we go. This is Alan's affidavit here. It further identified objectionable materials in the DEI and social studies curricula, including a handful of books that promote secular moral values, LGBTQ themes, or activism contrary to our faith. And it's like, I promise you, they're just books that have a gay character. It's not a big deal. He goes on to say, this message directly contradicts the biblical teaching about marriage and family that I am working to instill in my child. Calm down, dude. Your child is not going to want to see you in a little bit. There's one other thing I wanted to show you here. Here we go. Look at number 79 in the affidavit. I have now had to engage in damage control with my 5-year-old child. I have been forced to be prepared to discuss sensitive topics related to sexuality, marriage, and family structures much earlier than I wanted to or believe is appropriate for my child's age and maturity level. Why is this so hard? Hey, guess what, kid? Some people have a mom and a dad. Some people have 2 dads or 2 moms. There, that's the conversation I had with my kids. Why can't this dude have that conversation with this kid? It's not complicated at all. Meanwhile, this guy sends his kid, I assume, to church every week where they learn how, an underage Mary got impregnated. They have no problem discussing that one. When the district finally responded to this, they kind of laughed about the damage control line too. Look at number 72. Plaintiff Allen claims he's had to engage in damage control, yet his declaration lacks any statements describing any impact these read-alouds had on his son or how his son's innocence on these subjects has been compromised. Right. Because 1, we don't even know if the son listened to any of these books because maybe he was pulled from the classroom. And 2, if he did learn about these books, if he did read these books, what happened to your son that you're blaming us for? No answer whatsoever. Like, was Alan upset because his son came home one day and he was a little kinder than usual? I don't know. But this is the kind of bigotry that conservative Christians are now shoving onto public school teachers whose biggest crime is they want kids to know they are loved. That there are different families out there, that you're always going to be welcome here in this safe spot of a school. Like, if you need to do damage control because your kid is becoming nice, then your religion is the problem. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because this lawsuit and all of this stuff it happened last semester at the beginning of the year. Well, Alan and his lawyer sued the school district, and this week a federal court finally stepped in and issued a ruling on this matter. And it was in front of a George W. Bush appointee, for whatever that's worth to you. But this is the scary part about it all, which I will share right here. What did the judge say? Analysis. This case is squarely controlled by Mahmoud. And I'm paraphrasing the legalese, but what he's saying is the Supreme Court said parents can opt their kids out of the classroom for any sincerely held personal belief, so I got to follow what they said. So he's not judging the merits of how dumb Alan is and whether he has an argument or not. He's saying if Alan wants to pull his kid for religious reasons to Alan, They have a right to do that, so the school can't get in the way of that. And that is frustrating, but I kind of get it. I'm not even blaming the judge. I'm blaming the Supreme Court for their idiotic decision. And the biggest issue now is, well, what is Alan allowed to take his kid out of? And for that, we got to look at their deal. And here's the injunction that has now been issued. Look at number 2 here. They're saying when it comes to books, lessons, instruction, syllabi, teaching guides, etc., Alan's allowed to opt his kid out of it. Look at letter B. Anything that depict or describe LGBTQ characters, relationships, or activities, or LGBTQ plus political or social advocacy. Alan is allowed to remove his kid from the classroom if the school is doing anything that even suggests gay people are alive. That's what this judge is saying they can now get away with. And that to me is horrifying because he now has veto power over his son on anything he might learn in school, even if it's something as simple as, yeah, gay people are a part of our society too. It's very much just Christian bigotry right there. And the settlement, basically, that they have to abide by says that the district now needs to make sure Alan's son is not taught or otherwise exposed to any books or material that Alan doesn't like. It also says the district needs to send Alan in advance anything else that might depict or describe LGBTQ people. So, hey, we're going to read a story about like California or something like that, and there's a gay character in it, and then Alan gets veto power. Basically, Alan is making this district do more work that they don't have to do, all because he's a Christian bigot. And that is frustrating. These are the same teachers that are already putting together an IEP for his son. So the problem here to me, it's not the judge whose hands are tied. It's the conservative Supreme Court that is allowing this stuff to happen. It gave people like Alan veto power over his perfectly insane... He has veto power over totally normal curricular decisions, but his ideas are insane about what he doesn't want his kid to learn. He is a nightmare parent. And he's the sort of person who would rather ruin his son's experience in public school rather than just send him to a private Christian school where this sort of bigotry is tolerated. I mean, that to me is the problem with parental rights in public education. They're allowing parents to just ruin the class for everybody because they can't handle anything. They can't do anything. They can't deal with their kids learning anything that wouldn't belong in their church. It's so frustrating. And I don't think the district's going to fight this one for what it's worth, because whatever, let Alan's kids suffer. They'll try to focus on the other kids, which I get. Alan's son is not going to get the education he deserves. I hope that this decision does not make the school reconsider which books they read to kids, because they shouldn't have to do that. Like, let Alan's kid leave the class. Don't ruin it for everybody else. Public schools are not catechism classes. You know, teachers don't need to protect children from the scourge of pluralism. Schools exist to prepare children for a life in a diverse democracy. That is what this district is doing, even if it has to work around the irrational demands of one insane father. I will also just point out to you that in all of my research for that story, I have no idea if Alan is married or what the status of his relationship is. Not because I care, but I feel like that would be relevant. Because for all of his talk about biblical sanctity and you got to respect my religion, there is no mention of the mom in any of these stories. I'm just curious. Anyway, I will stop there for this story. What questions we got here? Where was this? This is in Massachusetts, of all places. Great public schools. And specifically, if I can find it here, this took place at Joseph Estabrook Elementary School, somewhere in Massachusetts. Oh, thanks for that donation. If this guy has enough money for a lawyer for that, he could have afforded sending his kid to a Christian private school. I agree he could send his kid to a Christian private school. I think his lawyer works for one of those right-wing conservative legal groups that's like, this sounds like a case we would have fun with. Let us take it on for you, and then you don't have to pay us anything. So I don't think he's paying out of pocket for the lawyer. I wonder how much of this is bigoted people using Christianity as a shield or weapon, or if it's that Christianity breeds conformity, which leads to bigotry. That's interesting. I don't think these people are like faking their Christianity. I think they sincerely believe they are Christian, and because they're Christian, they are bigots, and because they're bigots, the rest of us can't have a good time. Rest of us don't get a public school system that works. I've always wondered about how many of these poor kids turn out okay despite their parents. A lot of them turn out okay. A lot of them, if you watch TikTok or Instagram, you'll hear from a lot of them because they speak out against their upbringing. Like a lot of parents like Alan are the ones who complain 20, 30 years down the line because their kids are not inviting them to Thanksgiving dinner. Like these parents have no interaction with their grandkids. Why? Because you raised me in this household of bigotry and I'm better than that now. So it is heartening to know that a lot of these kids turn out okay, but it still takes a lot to make them that way. Like they got to be going to like a public school. They got to work in a secular environment. They have to go off to college in a place where they can actually explore. And a lot of the modern Christian world is built so that you never have to leave the bubble. I can't imagine Christians turn out better when you delay their exposure to LGBTQ people existing at all. I mean, they don't turn out better. That's for damn sure. I'm not sure I mean, what do they want these kids to become in the future? More hateful than they are? Would that make these people proud? Would that make Alan proud? Imagine being the kid randomly being pulled out of classes and having no idea what thing the rest of his classmates are learning, but he's not allowed. No kidding. It is so hard to create an alternative assignment for one kid. And I'm sure these teachers will do a good job of giving him something useful, but the ostracizing is not a good idea. There are a lot of times when atheists or non Christians are excused from doing something in school because something religious is happening. And sometimes they're just told to sit in an empty classroom and do nothing. And that shouldn't happen, but it does happen in practice a lot. Some believers spend countless hours whining that actual people exist, yet get super mad if someone dares suggest maybe their God isn't real. The irony is always palpable. Yeah, it's like, I got a picture of the gay couple right there. They're drawn in this book for you. God, nowhere to be found. Where are these people? Nope, they're big mad about the people who actually exist. What do you think of Kirk Cameron and his becoming a preacher? He's kind of always been a preacher, hasn't he? I think Kirk Cameron was in the news recently because he suggested hell might not be real. And I'll be honest, I didn't really follow it that closely because I try to have a idea of a life. I have concepts of a life, and Kirk Cameron isn't a part of it. But I think he already is. I mean, he's been evangelizing for decades. So I have not heard of him becoming a preacher in any meaningful sense, but I do know a lot of Christians are mad at him right now because of his suggestion that hell is not real. All right, jump into another story. Let's see. Oh, you're not going to like this story at all. All right. I'm going to tell you a story that I find very frustrating. I hadn't thought about this story in maybe 3 years. And then this week, there was an update to the story that is also disturbing. I'm asking you to bear with me. I'm going to try to explain what's going on here without giving away the ending yet. So, let me start by showing you a picture of this guy right here. This is Paul Hart, and he began working for the Archdiocese of New Orleans in 1989. And at some point during his tenure in that archdiocese, sometime when he was in his late 30s, he met a 17-year-old girl who attended Mount Carmel Academy and was a member of his youth group at his church. And things took a very disturbing turn after that. Here's how one article described it. By 1990, this guy was allegedly spending his personal time with the student and began kissing her, groping her chest, and at least once engaging in what church investigators described as dry sex, which involves people simulating intercourse with their clothes on while in the rectory. So, that is what Paul Hart was doing with this child. Very disturbing stuff. Now, here's the thing, as criminal as that was, that girl did not tell anybody what was happening at the time. And she later said she didn't understand how inappropriate what the priest was doing. She didn't understand how inappropriate that was, which is something we've heard from a lot of survivors, which is that, yes, this bad thing happened to them, but they blamed themselves, or they thought they needed to go along with it. And it's not until much later, maybe in the Me Too era, that they realized this thing they had just dealt with was actually a criminal thing that happened to them. So by 2012, we're talking decades later, that girl had grown up. She had children of her own. She even sent them to a Catholic school in the same archdiocese. And she soon found out that Paul Hart, who had moved around quite a bit during his career, was now back at the church she grew up in and in close proximity to her own children. Can you even imagine? And now she knew that what he did was inappropriate. And now he's going to be around her kids? Hell no. So she told the archdiocese what had happened to her years earlier. And this is the way The Guardian put it. The woman filed a complaint with the archdiocese accusing Hart of grooming her before pursuing sexual contact she now realized was inappropriate. In a church investigation, Hart denied initiating what happened, but admitted contact, which he could not say did not cause him to ejaculate. Ew. But also, really, that's the thing you forgot? Like, sure, I was molesting this child, but I don't know if I finished. That's so creepy and weird. But they did an investigation. That is what the guy said. And the church's investigation did not go anywhere. Of course, it didn't go anywhere. It's the Catholic Church. They said later, Hart broke the Catholic Church's rule about celibacy, as if that was the real issue. But, they said, he did not commit child sexual abuse because canon law at the time, the church law at the time, said that the age of adulthood was 16. And he was with the 17-year-old, so technically she was an adult under their rules. So technically, he broke the vow of celibacy, but that's it. I will just tell you, in 2002, the archdiocese raised that age to 18, but investigators were going by church rules in place in the 1990s. It's messed up, but that's why the Catholic Church says we didn't take any action on this guy. And the end result is that Hart remained a priest in that diocese. He wasn't fired. He wasn't even seriously in trouble because he never, technically, according to the church, abused a minor. And because he didn't abuse a minor under their rules, his name never appeared on any list of priests who had been accused of such behavior. And you see where this is going, because in the 2000s and beyond, there were the whistleblowers, the spotlight reporters, the grand jury investigations, and all these Catholic archdioceses had to release lists of credibly accused priests and people like that. This guy's name was never on those lists because, according to the church, he never abused a child, even though she was. So, where am I going with this? In 2020, the Archdiocese of New Orleans files for bankruptcy. Oh no, thoughts and prayers. But now they were faced with these skyrocketing costs of child sexual abuse lawsuits. It costs so much money for them to deal with it. They're in the middle of the pandemic. They had no choice. They had to file for bankruptcy. But because they filed for bankruptcy, it put a halt on the lawsuits, and it began a process where lawyers could figure out what assets does the Catholic Archdiocese have? Because, like, maybe we sell that building, we get some money to pay off some of these survivors, things like that. But in order to make that happen, because they filed for bankruptcy, the Catholic Church had to share details about internal investigations. And here's where the story takes a really interesting twist. There was an attorney named Richard Trehunt who was involved as a lawyer investigating the diocese. His job is to figure out their assets and figure out, he has access to the paperwork about their internal investigations, right? Here is Richard Trehunt right over here. Trehunt, I should say. He's the guy by the microphone on the left. And here's the thing. He's going through these files. He is one of the lawyers representing the victims of sexual abuse. He's part of the committee investigating the archdiocese. So he's seeing this paperwork come in. He knows what investigations the church did and did not do. And he also knew that Paul Hart was currently working at Brother Martin High School, a Catholic high school in that diocese. And that is an all-boys school, but sometimes girls are in the building for like extracurricular activities. And so Trehunt was like, oh no, I need to tell the school that this guy in my paperwork is working for them, because they have no idea probably that he has been accused of sexual misconduct, or whatever we're calling it. He knew that Paul Hunt was a bad guy. He also knew that this guy was working at a Catholic school, and the Catholic school didn't know what he had done. And the reason he knew about, when he saw that the guy was working at this Catholic school, the reason that was like, oh my God, I got to warn them, is because it turns out Richard's cousin is the principal of that school. And it led to this text message between the two guys. Trehunt, hey, is Paul still the chaplain at your high school? Principal, yeah. You and I need to get together soon. Principal, shit. Trehunt, indeed. To which the principal says, you beat me to the text. That's an ominous question coming from you. So basically, you see the conversation they're having. The lawyer is saying, I need to talk to you. You got some problems with that guy. And the principal's like, oh no, I think I know where you're going with this, because I know what you do for a living. So guess what happened after that? Within days of the principal learning about that, the school releases a statement, and they say what about Paul Hart? They say, hey, guess what, everybody? He's retiring. He's resigning. He's stepping down, and I'm quoting here, due to his ongoing battle with brain cancer. That's the statement the school releases. They let this guy go. Obviously, they just wanted to keep the allegations quiet. All right, here's the next phase of this story. So all of a sudden, Paul Hart resigns to deal with brain cancer. And somehow, a reporter finds out, hey, did you hear about that chaplain from that Catholic school who resigned? Uh, you should look into that. And when the reporter, his name is Ramon Vargas, when he wrote about this story, check this out. This was the opening line of his article about Paul Hart. As past alleged misconduct with high school girl resurfaces, Brother Martin Chaplin retires. And Vargas writes, the chaplain at Brother Martin High School abruptly left his post earlier this month, just days after the school was notified of allegations that he kissed and fondled a Mount Carmel Academy senior in 1990 while serving at another local Catholic institution, according to multiple sources with direct knowledge of the situation. That guy nailed it. That's exactly what happened. But here's the question. How the hell did he know that? I mean, he's a good reporter, but how the hell did he know that? The archdiocese clearly did not want anyone to know the real reason Hart was resigning, but Vargas seemed to have inside information. And for months, no one could figure out how he knew the story. And then guess what? Because newspapers keep folding, Vargas, for whatever reason, left his job with that New Orleans newspaper. He was a freelancer, I think. Maybe he worked for other papers at the time, but he ended up writing a piece for The Guardian. And in that piece, he wrote about this story. And here is what he admitted in his piece. Richard Trehunt also sent an email to this reporter, then working for the local newspaper, the Times-Picayune, advising him to keep Hart on his radar without saying why. The Times-Picayune, as I just told you, reported that Hart's departure came as the misconduct investigation resurfaced. The judge overseeing the archdiocese's bankruptcy petition ordered a leak investigation because Hart's file was among documents the church had classified as confidential. Do we get what's going on here? Richard Trehunt reached out to this reporter as he was texting his cousin, and he's like, hey, reporter, that chaplain at that school, keep an eye out on that guy. And the reporter's like, well, I know what you do for a living, so I'm going to make some phone calls. And he, the reporter, figured out what Hart had done all those years ago. Now, who told him the details about what he did to that little girl in 1990? I have no idea. Vargas did not reveal that. But he's a reporter. As soon as you get a tip, you have your ins. You know who to call, who might know some stuff. And he was able to connect the dots that way. That's what a good reporter does. And interestingly enough, look at what this guy says, the reporter, Vargas, when answering questions during that leak investigation. This reporter declined to discuss any sources cited in the article, but did say Trehunt did not provide any information in the piece, which is true. Trehunt just said, hey, keep an eye on the chaplain. Nothing indicates that investigators concluded Trehunt had provided any of the information in my article or was one of the unnamed sources cited. So, it turns out after Vargas's article came out, nailing the reason that the chaplain had resigned, the real reason, which is this story right here. After this came out, the judge overseeing the archdiocese's bankruptcy is like, there's no way that reporter could have known that this chaplain had been investigated for sexual misconduct unless a lawyer involved in this case told that reporter what was going on. And if a reporter told, if a lawyer told that reporter what was going on, that lawyer has violated the rules of confidentiality that he is sworn to uphold by being part of this investigation. So they needed to know who leaked that information, not because of any merit, not because of anything involving Hart, but because if someone involved in this case is leaking information, we got to know who it is. That's why they interviewed the reporter, because they needed to know who it was. And he said, well, listen, Richard told me I should look at the guy. I should keep my eyes on that guy, but he's not the way I was able to connect the dots and figure out what happened. But in any case, what did that lawyer, what did that judge do? Well, she said, I'm pretty sure it was Richard. So look at this. That judge in that bankruptcy case immediately removed from the Clergy Abuse Claimants Committee Richard Trahant, two attorneys with whom he frequently collaborates, and a number of clients. She got all of them off the case. And then she levied a $400,000 fine against Trahant, saying the amount was derived from the cost of the leak investigation. Not only did she kick him off the work he was doing because she said he's the leaker, she fined him $400,000 basically as a punishment for doing it. And when that story came out, this is the Vargas story explaining all this. This came out in October of 2022. Guess what Richard Trahant said when he was hit with this $400,000 fine? I don't believe I violated the confidentiality order by alerting a school about a cleric who had previously engaged in misconduct with a teen. The attorney said, I'm going to do something about it 10 out of 10 times. I love this man. He is amazing. So this guy said, I didn't reveal anything that was confidential, but you know what? I would do it again. How badass is that? So the bottom line here is that Trahant did exactly what the Catholic Church should have been doing a long time ago. He took action when he realized there was a problem. But because his actions violated the letter of the law when it came to these bankruptcy hearings, he now faced this staggering $400,000 fine. And you know what's really appalling? You know what the archdiocese said when he was hit with that fine? They should have said, hey, thank you. Thank you for making sure that guy was not working at the school. That's not what they said. Here's what they said. A spokesperson for the archdiocese, the second oldest in the US, serving about 400,000 parishioners, declined comment other than to say, the wisdom of the judge's ruling speaks for itself. These fuckers. The wisdom of the judge's ruling. You can feel the condescension in that statement. Richard Trahant deserved a medal for what he did, not a fine. Because when the morally correct thing to do stands in opposition to the law, you have to respect people who do the morally good thing to do. When they cause good trouble, when they are peacefully protesting, you have to admire that. And this may be a messed up situation, but everything Richard did, everyone is better off because Richard spoke up. So, like, if the Catholic Church gave a damn about any of these victims, they would be first in line offering to pay the fine on his behalf because he did them a favor by making sure they dismissed a former child sex predator. Like, just because the law, technically speaking, the confidentiality rules, just because that may have been on the church's side, does not mean the church should, like, revel in victory, right? The response they gave shows you how little they care. And the reason I am talking about all this now is because I saw this headline this week. Richard Trahant has been fighting this case since 2022. It's been over 3 years. He's been battling to overturn that decision, that fine against him. And last week, he finally got a ruling from the appellate court. And it was this. Federal appeals court upholds $400,000 penalty against attorney who disclosed priest's abuse. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said, yeah, what that judge said earlier, it's the letter of the law. You broke the confidentiality rules. So, yeah, you still have to pay it. And I'm skipping over their legal reasons for justifying it, but basically it came down to you violated your confidentiality agreement. That's all we care about here. Um, and you know what Trey Hunt said after all of that, after that fine was upheld? I did what I had to do to keep a child predator away from children. That's what he said last week, because he is still a badass. But now he has this $400,000 fine. He could appeal this to the US Supreme Court. It's probably not going that route. It's hard to believe they're going to take this up. It's not exactly a controversial ruling, even if it's not a good ruling. So, but like what I'm taking away from this is this entire story, this entire case has just been so many systemic failures, one on top of another. Like the Catholic Church chose self protection over accountability. They don't care about kids. The bankruptcy proceedings just became another tool for the church to bury the truth and punish somebody who took the moral high ground. I mean, the one silver lining to this is we got to know Richard Treyhunt. Like, we need more people like him. He did the thing the church repeatedly fights against, which is he treated a credible allegation as an urgent and pressing matter, not just some inconvenience. He wasn't trying to bury it. He's like, I need to do something about this before this guy strikes again. All he did is he warned a school that that guy was working around kids. He indirectly tipped off a journalist by saying, look at him. That's it. And he decided the rules were not sufficient to help kids and deserve to be broken. That's the sort of moral clarity and personal courage that religious institutions like to pretend they are teaching you, but this lawyer actually had. Like, I can't even decide if I'm mad at the courts necessarily, not because I like what they did, but because they're doing exactly what you expect courts to do, following the letter of the law. But the end result is a scary message, right? When it comes to legal priorities, a policy of secrecy will always override the safety of children, at least when it comes to the church. And the Catholic Church and the courts are sending a message to future whistleblowers too. If you speak up to protect kids, even when the contract says you're not supposed to, we're going to try to ruin you financially. But silence will always be rewarded. In case you're wondering, I don't think there is a GoFundMe for this guy, Richard. I don't even know necessarily if he needs it. He hasn't asked for it. I don't know the guy. But I admire the man's courage, and I don't know where he goes from here because the appellate court just upheld that ruling. So I don't know what he does now. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Can you see why that story pissed me off? All right. Hey, friends, as usual, sounds like an absolutely interesting story. Hello. And yeah, I hope you found it as interesting and infuriating as I did. Start a GoFundMe for this guy. I mean, I'm not going to do it. If I find out anything about his lawyers doing it or him doing it, I will pass that information along on this channel. He should file bankruptcy. Yeah, find a way to reverse Uno this thing or something. This is what happens when you have political judges. Here's the thing. I know I thought about this for a while. I don't even think this is a political decision. And that's partly what's making me mad about this. I don't even think the courts were wrong with their decision. I think they're just saying, look, you signed the contract and you broke the contract, so I have to do this. It's kind of like any judge saying, I don't like this, but the Supreme Court told me I had to rule this way, and I am bound to do what they tell me to do because I'm a judge. I can't get that mad at that because then the law needs to change. Then the Supreme Court needs to change. I'm less mad at these lawyers who are like, this is just what I got to do. Sorry. It's not like the judge was bragging about it. So, I don't like the arguing. I don't like the justification here, but I'm less mad at the judges and more mad at the Catholic Church for fighting this thing. Could there have been a symbolic fine like $1? I don't know. I think the fine was to cover the costs of the investigation that the court had to do because to find the leaker. And I guess the judge even said it actually costs like $700,000 to do the investigation. So I'm actually doing you a favor by cutting that amount in half or whatever. But for what they needed him to pay for the cost of the investigation, that was the justification for it. Whatever happened to mandatory reporting? Yeah, I mean, the church, I mean, mandatory reporting laws were not, I don't think, in place when this happened to that child. So I don't know what that's all about. And it wouldn't have applied in this case because Paul Hart was never accused of doing anything on the record, right? It only came out later. The girl was 17. She was an adult in the Catholic Church's eyes. So it's an internal conflict, not a criminal one. Well, maybe if the Epstein files keep coming like they're legally supposed to, Donald Trump will step down due to a battle with brain cancer. If only. He's never going to do that. But it is funny to think that Trump could ever say he has brain cancer because there's no way Trump would ever suggest there's something wrong with his brain. He would never allow that to be said. All right, I'm jumping to a different story. Give me a second here. Okay. There is a Ten Commandments battle happening in Indiana right now because I think the Republican leaders of the state of Indiana saw what's been happening in Louisiana and Texas and like Arkansas. And they're like, we need to jump on this bandwagon and try to get the Ten Commandments up everywhere. And the way they're doing it is rather unusual. And I thought that was worth discussing here. So the backstory here is that in 1958, whoever the governor was of Indiana at the time put a Ten Commandments monument outside the state capitol. And it was there for like decades, long before atheists started filing lawsuits over that sort of thing. And in 1991, that monument was vandalized. Okay, so it came down. The Republicans vowed to replace it, but it took a while for all the logistical stuff to happen. So it wasn't until 9 years later in 2000 when they had a new monument ready to go. And that monument, and I will show it to you right here. This is the monument they wanted to put up. It has the Ten Commandments in the front. And then on the back of it, and you can't see it in this picture, they have the Bill of Rights listed. But also, if you zoom in, they have like the preamble to the 1851 Indiana Constitution. And at the very bottom right there is like a dedication to the Indiana Limestone Institute, which is the company that made it. So that's the best picture I could find, by the way. But they didn't just want to put up that monument. That year, Republicans passed a law to put up the Ten Commandments in schools and courthouses, everywhere else. So by the time in the 1990s, by the time then Governor Frank O'Bannon announced that the new monument is going to be placed on the State House lawn, at this point, this has become a thing church-state separation groups are now fighting. And so a federal lawsuit was filed by the ACLU of Indiana, or as it was called at the time, the Indiana Civil Liberties Union. I'll call them the ACLU of Indiana. They filed a lawsuit to stop that monument from going up. And guess what? It was an open shut case. This is pretty obvious. You can't do that. It's obviously a promotion of religion. And the court said that the new law to put up the Ten Commandments everywhere, it violated what's called the Lemon Test. Without getting too legal on you, the Lemon Test says there are rules we can use there's a test we can apply to see if a law violates church-state separation rules. And this law totally violates church-state separation rules. And basically, Indiana's Ten Commandments law did not have a secular purpose. It promoted Christianity pretty clearly. So that was the end of that. And after the appeals process ran out, like by 2002, this case was dead. The Ten Commandments were not going up anywhere. That monument was not going up in front of the State House. So here's where we get to today. The Republicans in Indiana have seen that in other states, they have passed Ten Commandment laws. And in all the states where they have passed Ten Commandments laws, church-state separation groups have filed lawsuits to strike those laws down. And pretty much everywhere they have been successful. I say pretty much because in some places we haven't gotten a decision yet. They're still doing preliminary injunctions and stuff. And later this month, the Fifth Circuit, very conservative Court of Appeals, is going to hear these cases, and it's not going to end well. But for now, all the courts have said these are illegal. And yet red states have passed these laws anyway. And Indiana, which is red, is like, we got to get in on this. So what's interesting is they are not trying to pass a new law to put the Ten Commandments up everywhere. They're saying, hey, in the year 2000, we already passed a law to put the Ten Commandments up everywhere. And the judge who knocked it down said we couldn't do that because it violated the Lemon test. Well, guess what? Today's Supreme Court says the Lemon test is dead and you can't use that anymore. And so we want you, the courts, to revive our old lawsuit from over 20 years ago and like undo your decision. That's basically what they're trying to argue. And this is what they actually said in their press release. This is Indiana's governor. Governor Mike Braun and Attorney General Todd Rokita asked federal courts to lift 20-year ban on historical monument at Indiana State House. And I just want to pause on that word right there, because look at what they're doing here. They know that the original monument was basically struck down because it's promoting religion. And they know if they want to get any traction here, they got to pretend that this Christian monument is totally not about Christianity. Because if there's one thing they've learned from Jesus, is that it's always okay to lie in favor of Republican goals. So they're now pretending this is about history. This isn't about religion. And they're hoping that does it for them. And look at how Mike Braun, the governor, talked about it in this press release. This monument reflects foundational texts that have shaped our nation's laws, liberties, and civil life for generations. Given the clear shift in constitutional law and the long history of similar displays across the country, we ask the court to lift this outdated injunction. Restoring this historical monument is about honoring our heritage and who we are as Hoosiers. Lots of problems with this statement. This monument reflects foundational texts. No, it doesn't. The Ten Commandments aren't foundational. That's why the law about, honoring the Sabbath day, keep it holy, that's not a law anywhere, and it shouldn't be. Not worshiping false idols is not a law anymore because no one gives a shit about the Ten Commandments. It's not foundational. Now, you could argue the Bill of Rights is, but the weird thing about this monument is the way they want to place it outside the state capitol. The public would see the front of it, which is the Ten Commandments, and you got to go around to the back to see the Bill of Rights, which means effectively no one's going to see the Bill of Rights. So you can't even argue this is about promoting the foundational text because there's only one of them and it's on the part no one's going to see. And no one cares about the little tiny font of the Indiana Constitution from 170 some years ago. And then look at what else he says. Given the shift in constitutional law, there is no shift. What the Supreme Court has said is you can't use this tool to argue that a law violates church-state separation, but there are so many other tools you can use. For example, Amendment 1, the Establishment Clause. That says you can't have government establishment of religion, which is what this is. So there's no shift. This long history of similar displays across the country, no, there isn't. There isn't a long history of these displays. If you have a standalone Ten Commandments monument, those are illegal. And it's been illegal for 20 plus years. And it is funny to me, as someone who lives in Illinois, to hear Indiana talk about, we don't want anything that's outdated. My dude, you live in Indiana. The whole state is outdated. Your heritage. I promise you, if you ask anybody, what's the heritage of Indiana? No one's going to say Jesus. God. So in their lawsuit itself, they say the Supreme Court's gotten rid of the Lemon test, and there's no constitutional problem with the state installing a donated monument that reflects the historical, legal, and cultural significance of all the shit that's on the monument, which, again, bullshit. If they wanted to put up this monument as part of a giant collection of monuments that has the Bill of Rights and whatnot, which is what they do in Texas, yeah, you probably could get away with it, but that is not what they want to do. So there's no reason for any judge to take this seriously, much less opening up a case that was shut and filed 20 plus years ago. But the same could be said about a lot of bad faith efforts by Republicans to circumvent the law. And to be fair, Republicans have had enough success getting right-wing judges to do their bidding that I guess we should be worried about this. I mean, that's how Christian nationalists operate. They're looking for dominance. They're not looking for neutrality on religion. They think Christianity deserves special treatment by the government. And if that treatment directly contradicts the Constitution, to hell with the Constitution, they say. Like, what's the point of having the Bill of Rights on the monument when the other side of it directly contradicts what those amendments represent? I don't know. The Establishment Clause would be meaningless, though, if states are allowed to advance one religion's beliefs only because the proponents are pretending it's not about religion. Indiana lost this fight in the past because there was no ambiguity about what they were trying to do. Everyone could see what they were trying to do, and nothing has changed this time around. You have the same backwards Christian nationalists in power. The only difference is that the judges are way more partisan these days. And if the courts take this seriously, they will be rewarding dishonesty. And if they reject this lawsuit, as they should, that's not anti-Christian. That would just be pro-American. Before I finish this story, I want to share one last thing for you. Several years ago, like 2019, the guy who used to be the executive director of what's now called the ACLU of Indiana, his name was John Krull. He wrote an article. I'll show it to you here. But because the website's like dead and the formatting is off, it's weird font and it's weird formatting. So I'm just going to tell you, he wrote a story about like his history working for the ACLU of Indiana. And he talked about how in 2000, when they were trying to pass the Ten Commandments law, he knew it was totally illegal. And in his conversations with lawmakers, he said Republicans knew that law was illegal too. Like, they made jokes about how illegal their law was. And here's what he said. He said many of them knew the Indiana Civil Liberties Union was going to sue and that the state was going to lose. But that didn't stop most lawmakers from voting for it. Let me show this to you. I know it's bad formatting, but they knew the ICLU was going to sue and the state was going to lose, but that didn't stop them from voting for it. In a quiet moment, I asked one of them why he did it. Asked a Republican this, and he chuckled. That's the way the game is played, isn't it? He said. We avoid taking a hit with the thumpers, Bible thumpers, his term for the religious right, and the courts clean up after us. He shrugged his shoulders as if to ask, what's the harm? Like, these Republicans in 2000 were like, yeah, we're doing something illegal, but the courts will fix our mess. And our voters, who are idiots who want this illegal thing, at least they won't be mad at us. Sure, we could do the right thing and oppose it, but politics. Like, that's how Republicans work? It's all a big game to them, right? They got to pass a bill they knew was illegal to appease their dumb, ignorant Christian base. And then the courts did knock it down. cleaned up after their mess so that the conservatives can just tell their voters, I tried, but damn liberal courts. And then that cycle just continues. And the conservatives see this as a win-win. The only people who don't like that are the people who care about silly things like a functioning government and a legal system that works. And that thing at the end where the guy shrugged his shoulders, what's the harm? There is harm. And this is what Kroll wrote in that piece. Fighting those lawsuits takes time. And if the law is knocked down, who's paying the legal fees on behalf of the state? It's the taxpayers. So we're wasting their money. And it leads conservative voters to believe their lawmakers that they vote for are doing work when they're clearly not doing anything that is beneficial for the people in the state. And on top of that, what happens if you have some wayward activist right-wing judge who decides the law is broken and the Ten Commandments should go up? That creates all kinds of chaos. And the only way you don't have a chance of that happening is by not filing a stupid law like that in the first place. And none of that stuff has changed today. The only difference is that those activist judges on the right are all over our federal court system. Republicans know it. That's why they do this shit. And it's frustrating. So, keep an eye on this one in Indiana, and we'll see what happens with this case. What questions we got here? Honoring our heritage never bodes well. Seriously, if you live in America and you talk about heritage, either you don't know your heritage or I'm judging you already. Putting up a monument with the Bill of Rights on it while violating the First Amendment is all kinds of wrong. Yeah, but don't worry, no one will be able to see the Bill of Rights on that monument anyway. Braun Beckwith, scariest governor, lieutenant governor ever. You know what? This was genuinely funny to me, and I thought about this, and I forgot to mention it. Braun is the guy pushing for this lawsuit, and he's getting his attorney general to actually file the law. Micah Beckwith, the lieutenant governor of Indiana, is the guy who's out front and center. He's the MAGA guy who goes on all the Dude Bro podcasts to talk about Christian nationalism, and yet his name is nowhere to be found in any of this. Now, to be fair, he's not involved. The governor doesn't put out the press release and the attorney general's filing the motion. You don't need the lieutenant governor involved in that. But this feels like a slight of sorts against Beckwith, because this seems like the sort of thing Beckwith would totally want to be a part of. I thought of that when Trump decided to invade Venezuela. J.D. Vance was nowhere to be found during any of that conversation for days. It's why did they push him out? Because don't they want him front and center on this? I don't know why Micah Beckwith was left out of this, but yes, to your question, that is a very scary combination of a Republican governor who doesn't care about the law with a Christian nationalist Veep. Not that different from our government in general right now, but scary stuff nonetheless. My eyes are tired and burning, so I'm missing a lot of the chat. On the plus side, I keep seeing I'm in a priest collar. Sorry. What else we got here? All right, let me jump to another story. I got two more for you here. I think you're going to find this next one real interesting. All right. I'm going to tell you about the Jersey Shore. And I think the last time I talked about this was a couple of years ago. So who knows who was watching this stream at the time. But just to give you a hint of what sort of thing I'm talking about, the Jersey Shore, very long. It's the sort of place that people like me from the Midwest, that's the sort of place you go for vacation so you can go to the beach with your family, gather with people. It's a beautiful area. Anywhere on the coast is beautiful, right? Well, the way they do it in New Jersey, as far as I could tell, is there's so much coastline that they allow different groups, like the towns on the shore, to kind of manage their access to the beach, to the ocean. And in the city of Ocean Grove, the group that handles the half-mile stretch of beach and oceanfront, it happens to be a Christian group. And for so many years now, they have been openly proclaiming that, yes, they're managing the property, but this is property meant to elevate Jesus. And to that end, a couple of years ago, after Hurricane Sandy really destroyed that part of the country, they needed to install a new pier overlooking the ocean. And this is what they ended up doing in Ocean Grove. That's the pier they built. That's how Christian these people are. They're like, sure, we could just build a bridge overlooking the ocean, but why not add Jesus to it? So, like, that's a real thing that happened. Just to point out a couple things, the beach that you are seeing around that pier, that is a public beach, but it's like privately managed with the help of the state. Don't ask me to get too legal on that, but I think that's how it works. Okay, so that's Ocean Grove, and that is the Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association. That's the Methodist group that runs that half mile of lakeshore. And if you go to their website and everything, they say things, the OGCMA says things like this. They want you to visit, and they say, you will feel the touch of God if you come in faith. Make your plans now. The Ocean Grove CMA invites you to have joy in Ocean Grove, your Christian seaside resort. Oh, it's not just a seaside resort, it's a Jesus-approved seaside resort. Okay. They also say their goal is to help people know and grow in Jesus. Okay. In case you're wondering how they ever got control of this whole property, um, basically, Ocean Grove, it's a small section of the town that overlooks that thing, but it has a unique charter that dates back over like 150 years that allows it to set its own rules. And I'm not even going to get into that because it's not relevant to this story. But basically, this Christian group has been allowed to run its own fiefdom on the Jersey Shore. And that's the reason they were also allowed to build that Jesus pier, that cross pier. It cost $2 million, but they were allowed to do it because they're the ones that raised the money for it. So they can get away with it. And that's what they did. Ironically, I just wanted to show you this. This is from October of 2025. And I didn't talk about it then. It wasn't that important, but it just made me laugh now. Jersey Shore's controversial cross-shaped pier will remain partly closed. October of 2025. Why is it closed? Let's look at this first paragraph. The future of a 500-foot-long ocean pier in Monmouth County, built in the shape of a Christian cross, remains in limbo nearly 2 years after concerns were raised about its structural integrity. The pier did not have structural integrity. I feel like that's a metaphor for everything these people are doing, and that just made me laugh. But okay, so it's shut down for now. Anyway, here's where we're going with this. Christianity, it's not just the pier. Apparently, if you go to that area, there is a flagpole that has a US flag and a Christian flag flying right there. You need a special badge to have access to the lakeshore. Like, you just need a permit to be able to go there. So we know you are paying a little bit of money to help them with maintenance. That's fine. Well, the badge includes a cross. They will sell you beach umbrellas if you need it to protect yourself from the sun. And those umbrellas are decorated with crosses. And there's also a cross mounted on the dunes at their beach. So, like, crosses everywhere. That's their whole marketing shtick. I mean, they kind of make it very clear that Jews and atheists and Muslims, you're welcome to give us money, but we don't really want you here, right? You can visit, but the people running the show want you to know this is a Christian place where the rules of church and state don't apply. Here's another picture of that place if you want to check it out. Honestly, besides that eyesore of a cross, kind of looks nice. I'm in Illinois and it's January. Anywhere like that looks nice right now. But that's what Ocean Grove is. Now, here's the part of the story that's relevant for you. There's my prelude. It turns out that since 2011, what Ocean Grove decided to do, because the state says, hey, you can manage this area, but you got to be open during the day so that people can use the shore during the summer, which makes sense, right? And they are. They say we are open from 9 a.m. to 5:30. Pretty much, I think those are the hours for the beach where they have lifeguards there and all that during the parts of the year where you would go to the beach. But I pulled this up from a couple of years ago. Check out this rule that they have. It's number 4. Beach hours are 9 to 5:30 except Sunday from 12 to 5:30. Why is the beach closed on Sunday morning between 9 and 12? No one shall be permitted on the beaches from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Sundays, starting the Sunday after Memorial Day in May until the Sunday after Labor Day in September. So basically, during the summer on Sundays, which is like the day every time everyone wants to go to the beach, you can't show up. You can't go there between 9 and 12. And what does that actually mean, the beach is closed? Because how do you cut off the lakeshore? Well, it turns out in Ocean Grove, they have like 9 entrances to get to the beach, and all 9 of them are closed off, padlocked, chained. You can't get through. Now, what if you really wanted to get to the beach? Well, you could go to the neighboring towns, access their beach, and then walk over. You could do that. You could jump the fence if you wanted to, but the doors to the beach are not open to the public between 9 and 12 on Sundays during those summer months. That's what they were doing. And that became a problem for them because that's when everyone wants to use this, right? Now, there's a lot of reasons this is problematic for people. Consider, for example, what if you're in a wheelchair? You could still go to the beach, but if you were in Ocean Grove, they're like, well, you can't access it right now, even though it's sunlight, even though it's a Sunday morning. Hey, listen, why don't you go to the next town over and access the beach that way and come on over that, like through there? If you have some sort of disability, you're not really able to do that. So people argued this is unfair to people with disabilities. They were arguing, like, why do we have to follow these rules? Like, there's no reason we should have to do this. And in a letter to the Ocean Grove CMA in 2023, someone from the state, a state official, wrote to them and said, you are preventing people from accessing the beach during daylight hours, and this violates state law. And the OGCMA responded and said, excuse me, we have very good reasons for doing this. And this is what they said at the time. I will show you this right here. This is what the Ocean Grove people wrote back to the state in 2023. The outcome of the step closure enhances religious and secular quality of life experiences in Ocean Grove, which society recognizes as valuable. During this 0.5% of the year, between 9 and 12 on Sundays during the summer, the view of the ocean from the OGCMA's boardwalk and pier is of sublime natural beauty, without the visual elements of beach umbrellas and tents and masses of people. Who wants to see people on a beach on a Sunday morning? Where can anyone on the Jersey Shore just see the ocean? Here's an idea. If you go on the beach, you get to see the ocean and the sunrise or whatever it is. You could see all that stuff. So it's a dumb argument. But that is what they were arguing. They're like, we're not doing this for religious reasons. We're doing this because we just want it to be beautiful on Sunday mornings. Why would you not want it to be beautiful? Like, as if this whole thing was a coincidence. Even though you could make the same argument on a Saturday morning. But no, no, no. They just decided to close up shop 9 to 12 on Sunday when church is in session. So, how this is what they've been doing for years. I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but by that response that OGCMA sent to the state in 2023, the state responded by saying, yeah, we're not buying it. And their Department of Environmental Protection basically said, you're only allowed to run this area because we gave you a permit to do so. And you are violating that permit when you block access to the beach on Sunday mornings. And if you don't undo that blockade, we're going to start fining you up to like $25,000 a day. And that OGCMA said, oh, you're serious. So in 2023, the OGCMA said, fine, we're not going to block access to the beach on Sunday mornings. So they did away with the blockade, but they kept fighting this in court. And they kept arguing, and they went back and forth, these two sides. And in late June of 2025, the administrative judge looking into this last summer, finally issued her ruling, and this is what she said to them. In a ruling announced in late June this year, this administrative law judge sided with the Christians, saying its policy wasn't unreasonable under the public trust doctrine. She noted the association allows access to fishermen and board users, basically people who want to use the ocean. They have access to the ocean. And it doesn't prevent the public from getting to the beach using the side towns and walking their way over. It's difficult to conclude that the OGCMA is unreasonably interfering with public access under circumstances where it limits use of its private beach by the general public for several hours only on summer Sunday mornings. Really? Is it difficult to conclude that? Because that seems very unreasonable to me. When you have to take the long route because the short one is closed to you out of spite, that is an unnecessary obstacle. And plus, the OGCMA very much wants the public to honor its religious beliefs. They say it all over their website, and the public is under no obligation to take their religious beliefs seriously. But that is what this judge was arguing. And she went on to say one other thing I wanted to show you that was kind of infuriating. This is from the judge's administrative ruling from last June. The right of the general public to reach the water has always been honored by the OGCMA, which only asks that in return, its sincere interest in upholding the Sabbath be likewise honored and accommodated. It is difficult to conclude that they are unreasonably interfering with public access. I'm sorry, what is it? Like, they've always allowed you to have access to the water. All you have to do is acknowledge their interest in upholding the Sabbath. Why do I care if they're upholding the Sabbath? I'm the public. I don't care what they believe. Why is that? Why do I have to respect that? That's bullshit. Like, so one side refuses to grant the other side access to the beach because of personal religious mythology? No, that's not a fair fight. So that was the ruling from last June. It was infuriating. And you could tell the OGCMA was thrilled. They're like, we could put our barricades back up. But that wasn't the final say in the matter. Because of the way the law works here, that administrative judge's decision was sent to the state. And the state had to decide whether to accept it, change it, or reject it altogether. And they had the power because of the way all of this works. And this week, we finally got a response. After so many delays, the Department of Environmental Protection Commissioner, his name is Sean LaTourette, he finally issued his ruling on the matter, what he was going to do. Here you go. I'm showing his decision to you. Let me see if I could find it. Here it is at the top. I disagree with the initial decision. For centuries, the public trust doctrine has ensured the right of New Jerseyans to freely access tidal waters, which unquestionably includes the right to freely access the dry sand beach of adjacent shorelines. These rights, which stemmed from historic Roman jurisprudence and extended to English law, became common to all upon our colonialization. I don't care about New Jersey history. In short, state law requires that department permittees, including the Ocean Grove CMA, provide public access to privately owned beaches. You got to do it. And the department is duty bound to protect public access at every juncture. Furthermore, OGCMA has for decades accepted and enjoyed the benefit of the state investment in the nourishment of its privately owned beach. Yeah, the state paid for your infrastructure. We help you maintain this place. And you have so many publicly funded projects that we pay for you, taxpayers pay for you, conditioned on the provision of public access. And so because of all of that, I'm sorry, let me go back to that statement right there. In view of these rights and obligations, OGCMA's summer Sunday morning beach closures are an unjustifiable violation of the public's right to access. So he's rejecting what that judge said. That is beautiful. It's the right move. And like the OGCMA is allowed to appeal the decision to a higher court, you have to wonder if they really want to keep fighting this. Because if your whole thing is we want to show Jesus to everybody, we want you to feel welcome here and then convert. Like, I don't think they want this much bad publicity when the bad publicity is centered around them keeping out people on the days everyone wants to use the beach. So, like, I don't know, do they want to keep doing the Streisand effect here? Do they want to keep shutting people out? Like, they're losing any respect they may have had. And this is an interesting quote from a local news article about this. This is Barbara Burns, 74 years old. She's lived in Ocean Grove for more than 20 years. It's a quirky little town. The beach is closed on Sunday morning. It's something that people lived with. And then we began to learn that this was not appropriate. And I love that quotation because here's this lady who spent the past 20 years there. And I could totally understand how locals might say, yeah, this is one of the things that makes us special. This is why we're different from the town next door. This is a Christian beach. You see the cross everywhere. We're closed on Sunday mornings. And that feels like a special thing to you. And then as this lawsuit and all the fights happen, you realize, oh, maybe this isn't okay. Maybe I wouldn't like it if some other religion did it next door to me. And so I appreciate that she said that. So good on her. The state was right to push back on this. I think the alternative would have created a really dangerous precedent, allowing private groups the ability to selectively deny access to public spaces based on their own religious rules. And I would also point out that the commissioner's decision to reverse that ruling, to reject that ruling, he's not telling the Ocean Grove people that they have to renounce their faith, that they have to remove their cross symbols, that they have to abandon their mission. They can still do all that as long as they maintain the beach and keep it open and all that. But they do have to play by the same rules as everybody else. And so the inconvenience of keeping the beach open on Sunday mornings over the summer is nothing compared to the harm that could have been caused by allowing religious groups to create their own obstacles to that space based on their own myths. So it's a win-win for everybody. It makes clear that the beach belongs to the people who want to access it, including people with disabilities and people who want to show up at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning to secure some space for their friends and family. And the OGCMA gets to maintain their control over the area too, without giving up all their Christian beliefs. So it should be a win for them too. And if they don't like it, you know what? Go pray about it. But stop going to court trying to fight this thing. All right, I'm going to stop there for now. What questions we got on this story? But from the beach, you don't really see the cross. That's true. You need like a drone at this point, or you need to be underneath the cross and looking up at the pier. I don't know how water works. I actually hate swimming. I just like the idea of being on a beach. True story. I'm going on a little vacation. I have 2 months of like a lot of stuff going on in my life. And after that, I have planned like a vacation for myself near the beach. I hate swimming. I don't like the beach. I just like the idea of it, and I need to get away for a day or two. And that's what I'm going to do. And I haven't figured out what I'm actually going to do because I don't want to go outside. That pier looks like the perfect spot for pagan blessings and non-secular yoga classes. You know what? I would not be surprised if they already do those at that area, but I haven't found that yet. But I wouldn't be surprised. That would be hilarious. Just upside down swords. Yeah, it's a monument to the letter T as well. They're using Jesus as marketing. Dude, that's what every church is. They're all using Jesus as marketing to make some money. On the other hand, you have to go to Jersey to get there. Oh, the Jersey Shore is awesome, though. I like that part of the state. All right, jump into one last story. Okay. One of the questions I feel like I ask myself all the time and have been asking myself all the time for how many years now is how so many white evangelical Christians can just blindly support Donald Trump, given that damn near everything he does and says and represents, it seems to violate everything they supposedly stand for. Like that was true in 2015 and beyond, but roughly 80% of white evangelicals voted for Donald Trump in each of the past 3 elections. And I know why they do it. I mean, they love the anti-LGBTQ bigotry. They love the anti-abortion cruelty. They love the right-wing judges, things like that. But at what cost, right? Like, is there anything that would break the spell he has over them? Like, is it going to be the Epstein files, the support of genocide in Israel, by Israel? Is it the way he terrorizes immigrants like he's doing now? Like, at some point, are any of these people going to say, like, you know what? It's not worth it. Maybe we can't vote for Democrats, but maybe we're just not going to vote because Republicans are giving this guy the ability to just cause chaos and wreak havoc upon people in our name. And we don't like that. Is there anything he could do that would break that spell? And here's a perfect example of what I mean. Last week, the Trump administration illegally invaded Venezuela, and they said it's just now under U.S. control. Why? Who the hell knows, though Trump has made it clear he just wants to take their oil. Like, on the surface, that has nothing to do with Christianity, and you would think it would be very easy for white evangelicals to condemn a hostile takeover of another country to seize their resources. Like, and even if you agree that Maduro was an illegitimate leader, the idea that this invasion is going to benefit the US in the long term, that's ridiculous. That's never worked. Like, regime change for oil has not worked, and you don't have to go that far back in history to know that. Like, isn't that something they could condemn? I want to show you a video of how one preacher has decided to defend what Trump is doing. His name is Hank Kunneman. He is the megachurch preacher at Lord of Hosts Church in Omaha. But his big thing is he's like the righteous gemstones, all in one, all come to life. He loves playing the part of a preacher. But I want to show you a clip from what he said on the Sunday after the invasion happened. And he's defending the invasion, and listen to how he does it. Listen to how he does it. It's really disturbing.
They say you have seized Venezuela for the oil. Yes, this is true. that there is that which has been brought to the forefront of this earthly battle. But the enemy has sought and was seeking to bring war and to bring conflict through Venezuela and to control the oil of the earth. But the spiritual oil and the natural oil does not belong to the forces of darkness or to those who thought that they could bring a one world order. This is my reset. And the oil of the natural and the oil of the spirit is mine, says the Lord. Therefore I have said, I will shake the earth, that the gold and silver is mine, and you will see through the natural oil that gold and silver, and there will be a revaluing of currency, and there will be a flow not only of oil in the earth that will cause the pressure and cause that which has suppressed the people of nations. I will lift it through the oil of the natural, but this is the work of the oil of my spirit, says the living God, that is destroying yokes and undoing heavy burdens through the oil of my spirit. And it will be seen in the signs of the natural oil and its refineries. And I will do this, says the Lord, and watch as the prices of oil go down, 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 and a surge of acceleration shall come unto the economies of the earth. But I speak to you, America, because you have cried out to me. I will show the earth what a nation looks like when they have called on God to come. For blessed is the nation who the Lord is their God, and I will show the earth.
I apologize to all of you for showing you that. I will say, the one thing I will take away from Hank is that I also think it would be pretty awesome to have a personal band provide a soundtrack anytime I talk. More people would listen. Don't spend a lot of time trying to make sense of anything he said, though, because it's just Christian gibberish. He found a way to say the Bible reference is spiritual oil, ... Therefore, we could take another country's actual oil, and God wants us to have as much of it as we want because Americans are true Christians while Venezuelans are apparently all heathens. I had to look this up, but just in case you're wondering, according to the National Catholic Reporter, Venezuelans are mostly Catholic. The U.S. State Department's 2023 report on religious freedom cites official estimates that 96% of the Venezuelan population is Catholic. And that may not reflect recent growth of evangelicals and people who are religiously unaffiliated, but it's Christian mostly. But Hank is like, yeah, we got to get in there and rescue it from all those horrible... I mean, people like him don't think Catholics are real Christians anyway. But like, the point I'm trying to make is there is nothing Trump does or will do that people like Hank will not defend as some sort of higher order spiritual battle. Like, if Trump's name and likeness and video showed up in the Epstein files, Hank would treat it the way creationists treat dinosaur fossils. Satan planted it there just to test you. That's the way these people function. That's why people call it a cult. And when you frame it that way, like, no amount of logic or evidence can ever persuade these people that something so obviously immoral should be condemned. And the people in that church, they don't realize Hank is a grifter because they're fooled by this guy whose entire life is doing Righteous Gemstones as a documentary. Like, what does he have going for him? Because he sounds insane, but he's white, he's male, he's confident, and he seems put together. Anyone who wears 17 layers of clothes and has a collar up to here seems put together. And for a lot of Christians, that's pretty much all it takes to convince them of the most absurd lies imaginable. I could say the same thing about like Joe Rogan. You know, he comes across to idiots as a confident guy who understands stuff and he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And in a world where no one seems to know anything, a lot of people drift to anyone who sounds like they know what they're doing, right? But this isn't just some fringe preacher saying something crazy. I'm not showing you that because he's a random dude who has a strip mall church in the middle of nowhere. This guy runs a mega church, and if you read articles about Hank Kunneman, you will know he is trying to take over the town he is in so that they can have enough power to take over local government. So he's not a nobody. This is a guy justifying the whims of a wannabe dictator by acting like it's part of some divine plan. And if you could turn fossil fuels into spiritual oil and military aggression into a reset, that's the word he used, that's ordained by God, how do you put a stop to any of that? You can't. Like, there's nothing he won't be able to justify. That's why the stuff he's saying is so dangerous. Like, it's bad enough he's excusing something that is such an injustice, but it's so much worse because he's making it sound like if you criticize Trump, you're really criticizing his God. Because in his mind, the Venezuelan people are nothing more than props in his like prophetic fantasy. And history has shown us time and time again that any war that is based on like one side's interpretation of God, that doesn't end well. Wars that are like the US trying to do regime change, that doesn't go well. Wars where we go in trying to steal oil, that doesn't go well. But if anything bad happens in Venezuela now, you know what he's going to say. It's all part of God's will, and you still got to support it because that's what Hank/God want. So the tragedy here is not just that this guy is saying something crazy, it's that people like him exist all over the country. This is why it's so hard to break Republicans from the grasp that Trump has over them, because they have people like this. And sometimes they are preachers, sometimes they're podcasters, sometimes they are fake news anchors, right? And they just say anything. Maybe you saw it with JD Vance talking about what happened in Minnesota. They'll lie. No part of them says maybe I shouldn't be doing this because they have no moral compass on this stuff. They will say whatever they got to say to defend something that is indefensible. That's just who they are. And the second they start talking about their religion, they make it that much harder for white evangelicals or conservative Catholics, Southern Baptists to come to their senses about any of this. And all of these people who follow along and vote that way, they've been conditioned by all this right-wing propaganda to just accept these spiritual lies. There's no amount of evidence that will sway them. And I know there are some people who have broken that spell. Thank goodness for them. But this is why it's really hard to convince these people that the stuff happening in our country right now is bad, because they keep getting this in their ear all the time. Guys like this telling them that everything that's happening is good news. Sure, ISIS is a terrorist organization murdering people. That's what Jesus wants. And then they just, okay, fine. Who cares who the victims are? Right? Guys like Kunneman, though, they're always happy to take advantage of their gullibility. All right, I'll stop there. What questions we got here? I don't understand why he's screaming at us. Oh, that wasn't screaming. That was him whispering to everybody. If you watch enough of his sermons, and I hate myself enough to have done that, that's not him yelling. When he yells, you'll know it. How could you do this to us? Because I had to sit through it too. Now you have to. Because I don't like you either. Hallelujah. Next. His collar needs to be about a foot taller. I wonder how much larger he could make it to the point where anyone would actually notice behind him in that church. Oh, Lord, lift up my collar. How do you not like the beach? The water gets in your ears. You can't eat food anywhere. No. That's not fun for anybody, I say to myself. Good to hear you're taking a break. Everyone needs it. Dude, when it's hot out, whenever I can, I've said this to Den so many times. I enjoy just going to random places to go hiking. And I'm in Illinois. It's very flat out here. So anywhere I can go where there are hills and mountains and I can just not be on the internet, that's a nice vacation. So I'll take those after the busy season's done. All right. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. I'll be back next Thursday night. Thank you so much to Den. I can't do this without him. Support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. You can subscribe to friendlyatheist.com for free if you want to. And that's it. I'll see you later. Have a good one, everybody.